Fear may have walked into your life like it owns the place, but it will not have the final say. I came to tell somebody that the enemy has been trying to convince you your story is over, your strength is gone, your chances have dried up, but the devil is a liar. You've been trembling in the shadows of what happened, what you lost, what they said, what you're afraid might happen next. But hear me, fear is not final. Fear is a moment, not a conclusion. Fear is a chapter, not the whole book. You are standing on the edge of a comeback you don't even see yet. God didn't bring you this far to leave you shaking in yesterday's anxieties. No, He brought you here to rise, to reclaim, to rebuild, to restart. So today, I need you to straighten your back, lift your head, and get your spirit ready, because your comeback starts now. Fear is a barrier, not a boundary. When fear rises in your life, it often feels like a wall, solid, immovable, towering over your confidence. It stands there as if it has the authority to halt your progress, dictate your decisions, and define how far you're allowed to go. What many people don't realize is that fear is rarely a true boundary. It's a mirage that only looks like a limit. Fear presents itself as something final, but it isn't. A boundary is something real, something God or wisdom or reality puts in place for your protection. A barrier, though, a barrier can be broken, climbed, pushed through, or walked around. Fear pretends to be permanent, but it is always temporary, always fragile, always smaller than it appears when you confront it. Fear magnifies the unknown. It exaggerates outcomes. It distorts possibilities. It takes a single what if and turns it into a mountain that feels too heavy to move. And the greatest trick fear ever plays is convincing you that you're not strong enough, not capable enough, not worthy enough to press past it. That's where the real battle takes place, not in the circumstances around you, but in the conversation within you. If fear can convince you to stay still, to shrink back, to silence your own purpose, then it doesn't have to defeat you. It just has to get you to stop trying. But once you realize fear is only a barrier, something shifts. You begin to understand that fear's power doesn't come from its presence. It comes from your perception. Fear can stand in your way, but it cannot hold you. It can whisper threats, but it cannot enforce them. It can shake you, but it cannot break you unless you surrender. That's why people who push through fear often look back and laugh, not because it wasn't real, but because it wasn't as impossible as it pretended to be. Fear is also a sign that you're close to something significant. Nobody feels fear when walking in circles. Nobody feels fear doing what they've always done. Fear shows up at the threshold of growth, opportunity, and change. It stands closest to the places where God is trying to elevate you. So when fear rises, it is often confirmation that you're stepping into territory the enemy doesn't want you to claim. It's proof that there is more inside you than you've accessed, more ahead of you than you've imagined, and more strength in you than fear wants you to believe. You don't defeat fear by waiting for courage to magically appear. You defeat fear by moving anyway. One step, one decision, one moment of faith at a time. Fear loses its grip when you act in spite of it. You might shake, you might sweat, you might doubt yourself, but movement interrupts fear's illusion of control. And each time you push forward, the barrier cracks a little more. Fear is not final. It is not the line God drew to limit your life. It is only the barrier standing between who you are and who you're becoming. And once you push through it, you discover it was never the boundary you thought it was. It was simply the doorway to your next level. Your setback is positioning you for a comeback. In the middle of a setback, it rarely feels like anything good could come from it. It feels like everything is falling apart, like life has taken something from you that you may never recover, like your progress has been erased and your momentum stolen. But setbacks are deceptive. They look like endings, but many times they are hidden beginnings. What feels like a delay is often a divine redirection. What feels like loss can be preparation. What feels like punishment might actually be positioning, setting you up, shifting you, aligning you for something greater than you were aiming for before the setback occurred. A setback disrupts your comfort, but comfort rarely grows you. When everything is easy, predictable, and smooth, you may not push yourself, stretch yourself, or challenge yourself. You may settle into routines that limit your potential without even realizing it. But a setback has a way of shaking you awake. It forces you to pay attention, to evaluate, to reassess your direction and your purpose. It drives you to think differently, act differently, and reach deeper into parts of yourself you may not have accessed otherwise. In that sense, a setback isn't just something that happens to you, it's something that happens for you. Often the most powerful comebacks come from the most painful setbacks because pain clarifies what really matters. When you lose something or get knocked down, you begin to see what is essential versus what is merely convenient. You discover strength you didn't know you had. You uncover resilience that was sitting dormant. You learn to trust yourself, and for many people to trust God in ways you never had to before. A setback strips away illusions and exposes truth. And truth is the foundation you need for a genuine comeback. Look at nature. Every seed must be buried before it grows. At first glance, being buried looks like being defeated, hidden, forgotten. But underground is where transformation happens. The seed breaks open, roots form, and strength develops. Strength that cannot be built above the surface. In the same way, your setback may feel like you've been buried, but buried doesn't mean buried alive. It means planted, and what is planted must rise. Your comeback doesn't begin the moment everything gets fixed. It begins the moment you decide that the setback won't define you. Comebacks start internally long before they manifest externally. They begin with the shift in your perspective that says, I may be down, but I'm not finished. I may be hurting, but I'm still here. I may have lost something, but I haven't lost everything. That mindset is the soil where comebacks grow. And when you rise, and you will rise, you often rise higher than where you fell. Not because you avoided setbacks, but because you endured them. Your setback didn't disqualify you. It repositioned you. It moved you into alignment with a stronger version of yourself, a clearer vision of your future, and a deeper understanding of your purpose. Your setback is not the end of your story. It is the setup for your comeback. Identity must rise above insecurity. Insecurity is one of the most persistent forces that tries to keep people small. It whispers doubts, magnifies weaknesses, and plays on past wounds. It reminds you of every failure and questions every strength. Insecurity tries to convince you that you are not enough, never talented enough, never worthy enough, never strong enough, never chosen enough. But identity operates on a completely different level. Identity is not built on feelings. It is not determined by opinions. It is not shaped by temporary emotions. Identity is rooted in truth. Who you really are at your core, who you were created to be, who you've been becoming even through your struggles. And for your life to move forward, your identity has to rise above the insecurities that try to pull you backward. Insecurity lives loud in the mind, but identity lives deep in the soul. Insecurity talks, but identity anchors. When you don't know who you are, every criticism feels like confirmation, every obstacle feels like proof that you're not capable, and every comparison becomes a weight. But when you know who you are, truly know, it changes how you walk, how you speak, how you respond, and how you see the world. Identity gives you a foundation that insecurity cannot shake unless you allow it. Most insecurities come from experiences, moments you were overlooked, words spoken over you, mistakes you made, environments that didn't nurture your confidence, but identity predates all of that. Identity existed before the insecurity ever showed up. You weren't born insecure. You learned insecurity from what life threw at you. And anything learned can be unlearned. Anything acquired can be replaced. You don't fight insecurity by pretending it doesn't exist. You fight it by rooting yourself in a deeper truth. You fight it by remembering that your worth isn't based on performance. Your value isn't based on perfection. And your future isn't determined by other people's perception. Identity rises when you stop defining yourself by moments. You are not the failure you experienced. You are not the heartbreak you endured. You are not the rejection that wounded you. You are not the fear that visits you. You are not the mistake you regret. Insecurity wants to freeze your identity at the lowest point of your life, but your identity is bigger than any one moment. It reflects your potential, not your past. It reflects your design, not your disappointment. When identity rises, it changes your posture. You stop apologizing for existing. You stop shrinking to make others comfortable. You stop hiding your gifts because you're afraid they won't be accepted. You realize that insecurity is a shadow, but identity is substance. Insecurity reacts to pressure. Identity stands firm in purpose. And here's the truth. You will always feel insecure in the spaces you were meant to grow into. New levels bring new pressure. But pressure doesn't expose weakness. It exposes identity. When you operate from identity, insecurity loses its authority. It may still whisper, but it cannot command. It may still tug, but it cannot control.
Identity gives you the clarity to move forward even when insecurity tries to drag you back.
You rise the moment you choose to believe the truth about who you are rather than the fear about who you're not. And once your identity rises above insecurity, everything else in your life begins to rise with it. Movement breaks intimidation. Intimidation thrives in stillness. It grows stronger when you hesitate, when you overthink, when you freeze under the weight of doubt or the fear of what might happen. Intimidation wants you stuck because stillness gives it room to talk. It whispers louder when you're not moving. It imagines worst-case scenarios, magnifies obstacles, and convinces you that taking a step is too risky, too uncertain, too overwhelming. But the moment you move, even if it's a small move, intimidation begins to lose its power. Action disrupts fear. Movement interrupts the cycle of overthinking that keeps you trapped. When you move, you shift from imagining defeat to experiencing progress. Many people wait to feel confident before they take action, but confidence rarely comes first. Movement produces confidence. You don't gain clarity and courage by sitting still, you gain it by stepping forward. You don't defeat intimidation by debating with it or trying to outthink it. You defeat it by acting in spite of it. Every time you move, you teach your mind a different story. You prove to yourself that intimidation didn't have the authority it pretended to have. You show yourself that you can do hard things, uncertain things, uncomfortable things, and survive. Intimidation exaggerates the size of the challenge, but movement reveals the truth. The moment you step toward what scares you, you realize the giant isn't as big as it looked from a distance. The mountain isn't as steep as it appeared when you were standing still. The conversation, the opportunity, the goal, it all becomes more manageable when you move toward it instead of shrinking away from it. Intimidation uses distance to create distortion. Movement brings you closer, and with closeness comes clarity. Movement also activates momentum. Momentum is powerful because once you start, it becomes easier to keep going. You may begin with trembling hands and a racing heart, but with each step you gain strength. With each act of courage, you reinforce a new pattern. Intimidation thrives on the idea that you won't try, but the moment you try, the spell breaks, the energy shifts, the fear loses credibility. You show yourself that you're capable of more than intimidation suggested. You don't need to take giant leaps. Small, consistent movement is enough to break the stronghold of intimidation. Make the call, open the document, fill out the application, ask the question, show up for the meeting, practice the skill. These tiny steps build resilience, confidence, and belief. They build a track record that tells your mind, I can move through this, I can do this, I can grow in this. Those steps accumulate, and before you know it, what once intimidated you becomes something you handle with grace and certainty. Intimidation isn't an indicator that you're unqualified. It's often proof that you're standing at the threshold of growth. The enemy doesn't intimidate what isn't a threat. The resistance you feel may be a sign of how powerful you truly are, and the only way to unlock that power is through movement. Not perfection, not certainty. Movement. When you move, you reclaim authority over your life. When you move, you silence the lies. When you move, you step into alignment with your purpose. Movement doesn't just break intimidation, it builds freedom. And once you start moving, intimidation will never have the same hold on you again. Faith activates the turnaround. A turnaround doesn't begin when your circumstances shift. It begins when your belief shifts. Faith is the inner spark that transforms possibility into reality. It is the force that refuses to let your current situation dictate your final destination. When everything around you looks still, stuck, or broken, faith is the decision to believe that movement is happening beneath the surface. Faith is not denial, it's determination. It's the bold conviction that something greater is working even when nothing visible seems to be changing. Many breakthroughs are delayed not because the opportunity is absent, but because the belief needed to activate that opportunity hasn't taken root yet. Faith is the key that turns the lock. Faith changes how you see, and how you see changes how you move. Without faith, challenges feel permanent and obstacles feel overwhelming. Fear becomes louder, doubt becomes heavier, and the unknown becomes a threat. But when faith rises, your perspective shifts. You start to see the possibility on the other side of the problem. You start to sense the purpose behind the pressure. You start to recognize that setbacks aren't signals to quit, they're signals to lean in. Faith reminds you that you're not walking alone, that destiny is not abandoned, and that the story is still unfolding in your favor, even when the path is unclear. Faith acts as a compass pointing you toward the future you were designed to reach. A turnaround requires movement. But faith is what inspires that movement. You won't step into what you don't believe is possible. Faith energizes action. It pushes you to start again, try again, rebuild again, and hope again. It gives you the courage to take steps that don't yet make sense. Faith empowers you to invest in a future you haven't seen, but deeply sense is waiting for you. And with every step taken in faith, doors that were once closed begin to open. Opportunities that seem distant come into view. Faith draws what you need into your path, because faith shifts your posture from passive waiting to active expectation. Faith also transforms adversity. It doesn't remove challenges, but it gives them purpose. You begin to understand that what you're going through can contribute to who you're becoming. Faith reframes the narrative from, why is this happening, to what is this preparing me for? That shift alone activates the turnaround, because battles you understand become battles you can endure, and battles you can endure become battles you can conquer. Faith gives you endurance. Endurance to keep moving when results are slow. Endurance to keep believing when emotions are heavy. Endurance to keep standing when circumstances are shaking. Most importantly, faith activates the turnaround because it aligns your mindset with possibility rather than limitation. Your thoughts become seeds, and faith plants seeds of victory rather than seeds of defeat. You start speaking differently, thinking differently, planning differently. You allow hope to have a voice again. And hope, combined with faith, is a powerful catalyst. A turnaround is not magic, it's momentum fueled by belief. When faith enters, fear loses its argument. When faith rises, doubt loses its grip. When faith leads, the future opens. Faith doesn't just anticipate change, it accelerates it. It activates what's been waiting to unfold in your life. Your turnaround isn't waiting for a perfect moment, it's waiting for faith. And once faith steps in, everything else begins to shift. You've walked through fear, setbacks, insecurity, intimidation, and the power of faith, and now you stand at the edge of a new beginning. Everything you've endured up to this moment has not been wasted. Every tear, every delay, every closed door, every quiet battle, every invisible struggle, all of it has been shaping you, strengthening you, preparing you for what's next. You are not leaving this moment the same way you entered it. Fear tried to stop you, but it didn't succeed. Setbacks tried to bury you, but they only planted you. Insecurity tried to shrink you, but your identity rose higher. Intimidation tried to freeze you, but you started moving anyway. And now faith in who you are, faith in what's possible, faith in what's ahead, is activating a turnaround you can't even fully see yet. This is not the end of your story. This is the beginning of your comeback. The fact that you are still here is evidence that purpose is still alive in you. You have more strength than you realized, more resilience than you believed, and more potential than you've tapped into. You are stepping into a season where what tried to break you will no longer have the power to stop you. So today, declare over your life that fear is not final. Say it until it settles into your spirit. Remind yourself that the barrier is breaking, the momentum is building, and the comeback has already begun. You don't have to wait for permission. You don't need everything to make sense. You don't need to have it all figured out. All you need is the courage to take the next step and the faith to believe that something greater is unfolding for you. Walk out of here with your shoulders back and your head lifted, knowing that you are stepping into a new chapter, a stronger chapter, a wiser chapter, a chapter written with purpose, powered by faith, and no longer controlled by fear.